In this lecture, we're going to be creating the home page for our website. Essentially, what we want to have is a place for a user to enter in some text and then hit a count button, which then trigger the event to, count up all the words inside of that text area. But the big thing that we're going to learn about here is forms. So what we want to do is we want to move to our home.html. Let's get rid of our little bit of a silly example there with the hi there. To completely get rid of this, let's go back to the views.py and get rid of that map that we'd passed in. There we go. Okay, so now that we are here, how are we going to let people enter in some information? Well, in the HTML world, we're going to use something called a form. A form is where people can basically enter info. There's text fields, text areas, that's like a bigger text field. We can also have like radio buttons, check marks, whatever it is that we want. So let's go ahead and create a form first. So we're going to do a tag for form, and we need to have an ending tag for that form. And inside this form, we need to tell it where it is that we want to go when someone's entered in their information. And so we're going to say action is equal to, and we'll put inside of quotes here, and this is where we want to have the URL eventually of the next page, which is the count page. Okay, so we'll leave that blank for right now, but inside of this form we need a place for a user to enter in some information, and that's where we're going to create something called a text area. A text area, just think it as like a big square box where someone can enter in a lot of information, because we want this to be able to handle a full Taylor Swift song or the Gettysburg Address. So we're going to have this text area here. There's a few parameters that we need to pass into here. So one is the columns. This sort of determines the size of this thing. So we'll just put as an example maybe 40 here. We also need to set some rows. Okay, we'll set that equal to maybe like 5. Then we also need to give it a name. And so because this is going to be like all the text that the user has entered, I'm going to call it full text here. So I'm going to do full text just like that. And then I'm going to have my ending text area just to the right of that. Remember, with HTML, anytime you open a tag, you have to end it. Like we had the opening form here, ending form, opening text area, ending text area, opening H1, ending H1. Then we need to have a button to allow them to submit. So if you want to just see what this looks like, let's go ahead and save this, and let's go to our home page, reload it, and boom, look at that, we get this nice box right here. So, and you can customize the columns and rows, right? Like if we made this 10, for example, and come back to our website, reload, look, it's like that much taller, okay? The next thing that we need to do is have a button so that after the user, types in some information here, blah, 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 we want to have like a nice big count button here. So inside of the form, we're going to go back and we're going to add an input tag. And with this input tag, we have to say what type it's going to be. And in this case, we are going to say that it's going to be a submit. And we also want to specify what the value of it is going to be. And the value is like what goes inside the button, the actual text. So we're going to say, let's retype here, value equal to, let's say something like count, exclamation point. Now we could end this with an ending input tag like this, but you can also, this is a little shortcut, if you don't have anything to put between the two tags, you can do a slash and then the ending caret, and that sort of just encapsulate all of it. So we'll hit save here, go back to the home page, reload, and look, we get that count button. So I'm not in love that it's right there. I'd like to have it on a new line. So the way to fix that in HTML is you can do a BR tag, and we'll do the ending little bit right there. So now that will go to the new line, and if you want more spacing than that, you could do even more, and you can get way more fancy with HTML. In fact, in our site number 2 and 3, we're going to be using Bootstrap, which makes it really easy for our sites to look nice and professional without all that much work. It's a great tool, but we're going to keep things basic here because I'm going to just try and teach you the basics of Django. I want you to understand more how it works, less on the visual side in this lecture, or in this whole section actually. So now that we have this in place, it looks great, but now we need it so that after I type in some information and hit count, we want to actually move to a new page called, our website /count somewhere. So you can see it's appended some information here, but it hasn't gone to like a new page. So in order for it to go to a new page, we have to create a new page for it to go to. So let's go ahead and go through the steps here. Remember, we've got to add a new URL path for this. So just to kind of clear things up here, let's get rid of our egg example. That was just kind of a silly one for us. And let's now do a new one that we're going to use for the count of the words. So we'll go ahead and copy this existing path that we have, but in this case, we'll add a count with a slash. So after someone has entered some information, hit the count button, we want it to go to our homepage slash count. And instead of it going to views.homepage, we want it to go to views.count. Now we don't have a function called count yet, but we'll make one. So we'll go to our views and we're going to say def count, and a request is passed in. And we want to return a render just like we have above. So we'll say render, and we'll pass in the request, and then also the name of an HTML file, which doesn't exist yet, something like count.html. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save that information, and now we need to go make a count.html. So we'll say new file, count.html. Okay, and inside of this HTML, just to know that we got to the right place, let's maybe say something like, let's do some h1 tags here, and we'll just maybe say count. Okay, I think we'll change that in the end, but just want to know that this is at least working. So all that's saved, let's go back. I'm going to reload the home page here, and now I'm going to type something like, hey there, hit count, and we didn't go anywhere. And you're wondering, well, why is that happening? Well, because if we go back to our home.html, with this form, we have to tell it where it is that we want to go. So one thing that we could do is we could tell it to go to count, just like this. If we hit save, this is not the prime way to do this, but I just want to show this for an example. So if we reload this, type in some information and hit count, it will go to the count website. But here's the only problem with this one. Let's say, for example, we change the name of what that URL path is going to be. Like we go here and now we're going to call it like counts or something like that. Okay, if we try and reload this page, well, it's going to break. So I think the better way for us to handle this is, let's go back to the original name count, and then in this home.html, inside of these double quotes, we are going to put a curly bracket, a percentage sign, another percentage sign, and then a curly bracket. So this is where we can enter in some URL information. So we're going to type URL space, and then we want to give a name here. The name that we're looking for is like the count page. So we're going to go ahead and just type count. And so the last step for this to work is we've got to go back to our urls.py, and when we make this path for count, we give it, the name that we want after the slash, the view that we want it to go to, and then we also give a new parameter here. We say name equal to, and then we set it equal to something like count. So whatever name we pass into here is the same one that we need to reference right here. Okay, it has nothing to do with the name that's here or the name of that view function. It's exactly about this. So just to kind of prove that this works, let's go ahead and go back to the home page. Okay, and if I hit this count button, it still takes me to count, but what's different now is, let's say, for example, let's go back to the home page, and I change the URL to say, instead of count, I want to say count the words or something like that. So I'll save this. I'm going to reload this page. Now when I hit count, it still goes to the correct location. If we go back and we look at the page source here, this will just show us the HTML that we're actually looking at. You can see here inside of the form, it's taking us to /count the words. So the main reason that I recommend inside of your HTML files referencing URLs this way is that you can still change what the name of your URLs are, and it will all work still inside of your project. Now this is not a good name, count the words. Let's just stick with count. So I'll go ahead and save that. But now we have the whole home page completely done, and we're ready to send over some information. The big question now is, like, how do we actually count the words?